there, my name is Megan and welcome to my channel, or welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing a July book haul for you guys. I was not intending to acquire so many books in the month of July that I did, but here we are. And I have kind of like a mixed bag of a bunch of different stuff. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get on into the haul. But before we do so, if you're not already subscribed to my channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button, as well as giving this video a like to throw my channel a little bit of support. The first book I'm going to share with you guys is The Pearl by John Steinbeck, and I have read this book. I actually discussed it when I talked about 10 short classics that you can read in one sitting, and I'm glad to finally have this in my collection. But in this book, we're following a character who is a pearl diver, and one day he uncovers this massive pearl that is going to bring wealth to him and his family, and it just follows his journey of kind of like rags to riches, and unfortunately the downfall that can come with excessive wealth and greed and all of that. So it is based on a Mexican folktale, from my understanding. I haven't read this book in years, and I probably should, just to refresh my memory on the complex themes that Steinbeck decided to write about. Next, my dear friend Andre sent me Mal Goes to War by Edward Ashton. This is the same author of Mickey 7 and Antimatter Blues, which are really fun, fast-paced sci-fi books. I do have reviews for both of those. I'll link them up in the cards if you want to check them out, but I've really enjoyed Edward Ashton's books thus far, so I was super excited when I got this in the mail, so thank you, Andre. But in this book, we are following Mal, and Mal is like a free-ranging AI, and in this world, the humans are fighting again, but that doesn't really affect Mal, and he accidentally finds himself installed in this cyborg, and the cyborg was responsible for protecting this human girl. So Mal, even though at first was indifferent about this war, inadvertently finds himself involved in it, and we are just following his story. I'm very excited to have this because, as with all of Edward Ashton's books, they're pretty short, fast-paced, fun, good sci-fis. Next, I have two books that my cousin gave me, and she said she didn't want them back, so essentially I have them now. But the first one is The Women by Kristen Hanna, and I think that this is her newest book. Kristen Hanna is a historical fiction writer, and she is very, very celebrated, just written a ton of things. I've never read her work before, and I'm not a big historical fiction reader, but my cousin really recommended this book. But we are actually following a main character named Frankie. This takes place during the Vietnam War, kind of a little bit before and after. And Frankie wants to serve, so she joins the Army Corps of Nurses and goes to Vietnam to serve as a nurse there. Obviously, it follows her story of just the heartache that went into that type of servitude, as well as when she came home from the war to an America that was very divided. So it just follows her journey during such a tumultuous time of our American history. The next book she gave me is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I didn't realize that this book was so short and small. I thought it was denser, but this is a book that is, once again, very celebrated. This author is very celebrated. This book has been on my radar for years and years. I just hadn't had a reason to pick it up. But if you're not familiar with this book, it is a magical realism type book, and there is a library that exists between life and death. And we follow a main character named Nora, who, upon visiting this library, has the opportunity to go relive her life or parts of her life in a different way to see how the outcome would have been using this midnight library. So essentially, each book in the library allows Nora to relive her life in a different way. So this is definitely a concept that has been done over and over again. Our characters are allowed to make different choices to see how that might have affected their life, how their life might be different for the good or the bad. But I've heard Matt Haig has beautiful writing, and this book has really, really good reviews, so I'm excited to have it. Next is a used book that I picked up at a library sale, and that is The Chosen Ones by Veronica Roth. I got it for $4 at the library sale. This is her, I think, first venture into adult writing, and it is a sci-fi type book, but it surrounds has-been superheroes. 15 years ago, 5 ordinary teenagers were singled out for some superhero type powers that they had, and they went up against this villain known as the Dark One, defeated him. So we are following their lives after this tumultuous event, and we see that each of these teenagers are struggling with different things like PTSD and all of that. And then the unthinkable happens. One of these chosen one teenagers dies, and there is a reemergence of the Dark One. And all of these characters have to come back together, and they learn that this villain's ultimate goal was a lot sinister and worse than they originally had thought. And they have to overcome their inner demons to once again rise up and defeat this villain. So it sounds like a traditional superhero type story, but with more adult elements thrown in. This is a book that has been on the back of my mind for many years since it's been out, and I'm excited to find a used copy of it and have it in my collection. And the last 3 books my husband got me, and the first one is Arch Enemies by Marissa Meyer. This is the second book in her Renegades trilogy, I think is what it's called, which is a YA superhero type trilogy. It's been around for a while, and I have the first book, Renegades, and I haven't read it, but I've read her Lunar Chronicles, I've read Heartless. My husband knows I like Marissa Meyer, so when he saw this, he's like, it's $5, so I'm just gonna get it for you. But I don't know anything in detail about this series, except, like I said, it's a superhero type story, but when it came out, it got good reviews, and I'll get to it eventually, and I'm excited to have it. And lastly, I have a duology, and that is Anatomy, a Love Story. And the sequel, which I didn't even know there was a sequel, Immortality, a Love Story. This one was bargain book price, but they didn't have the first book in hardcover, so I just ordered this one from Amazon, or my husband did, for me, and then this one obviously was discounted. I don't know why. This is a YA duology, and it is, I don't think it's fantasy per se, but it's gothic with a little bit of romance, kind of like I think a Frankenstein maybe type vibe to it, which really spoke to me because I love creepy gothic type stories. But in this duology, we're following a main character named Hazel, and Hazel wants to be part of the medical community, but this takes place in a time period where women were not allowed to pursue those types of careers, and she is kicked out of the program, but she makes a deal with the professor that if she passes the exams to get in, that he will let her get in to this medical program. The only problem is that she will not have access to any of like the training materials and study materials, none of that. So she decides to make a deal with a friend of hers named Jack, and Jack is like an undertaker, and he deals with dead bodies for a living. But something weird has been going on that Jack relays to Hazel. There have been men that have been skulking around cemeteries, digging up dead bodies, and he doesn't know why. Now Hazel and Jack have to work together to figure out the mystery of why these bodies are being dug up, who these people are that are ransacking these cemeteries, as well as helping Hazel learn what she needs to learn to pass her medical exams to become a medical doctor or part of the medical community in a time period where she is not encouraged to do so. So definitely a lot of things in the story that speak to me. And then the sequel, I don't really know anything about, honestly, and I have a feeling it's just going to be a new story in and of its own, but I'm very excited to have this duology, so thank you to my hubby for getting it to me. Alright you guys, that is it for my July book haul. Let me know in the comments if you have read any of these books and what you thought of them, or maybe some books that you have acquired in the month of July. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all in another video soon. Goodbye!